Jacob T. Marley by R. William Bennett, which is a pastiche novel for Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. And obviously, as the title indicates, it is about Jacob Marley. And in this book, we get to find out how he grew up, what kind of man he was, how he met Scrooge, and how he died. So I did not like this book. There were some things I did like about it, and I think somebody else might like it, but I did not care for it. I'm going to keep this spoiler free. What I liked about it was we get to see how Jacob Marley grew up. We get to see, we get like the feel of what his family was like, what he was like as a young man, and the way that he grew up and how he ended up thinking in the ways that he did. Because he was very similar to Scrooge. He was very self-centered, and he was very greedy, and he was very unkind and unforgiving. And so we get to see like sort of how his mind twisted into that. And then we get to see how he met Scrooge. I loved how he met Scrooge. I thought that was really appropriate, and I thought that was I thought that was well done. And Marley's life was well done as well. And then we get to see how Jacob Marley dies and the interactions between Scrooge and Marley while he's dying, and what happens to Marley after he dies. It's not the same as Scrooge at all. So it's nothing like what Scrooge went through. It was nothing like Scrooge's experience. I won't say any more about that because it would be spoilery. And if you want to read this book, I do not want to spoil that for you because I thought it was dumb. I'm so sorry to the author, but I just didn't like that at all. But somebody else might actually like that. Somebody might really like that. They might be like, oh, yes, that was fantastic. I did not think it was fantastic. I thought it was terrible. And I thought it was just ridiculous. And I'm a little bit angry about it, honestly. And then also he gets preachy a couple times in this book. Like, it's like he's trying to give you some kind of a moral lesson directly. Not like the moral lesson in A Christmas Carol where Charles Dickens does not tell you what you should and should not be doing or how you should and should not live and how you should and should not feel. He illustrates that through the experiences of Scrooge. And in this book, this author does not really do that very well. Like he is almost preaching. Well, he is straight up preaching a couple times, but it feels not like we're learning some kind of moral through Jacob Marley's experience. We're hearing him cast judgment on the characters from A Christmas Carol, like the author's judgment and personal opinion on the characters in A Christmas Carol, and I didn't care for that. Like, I'll give you an example. This is not a spoiler in any way, but if you just don't want to know anything at all about the book, I'm going to put spoiler across the bottom of the screen here in big letters. That way you can just fast forward through this next part that I'm about to say if you don't want to know. But it really is not a spoiler. It's not going to spoil the story for you. Okay, so I'll put the text up here, spoiler text. When that disappears, you'll know it's safe to play the video again. So do you remember the portion of the book where Scrooge is shown what became of that girl that he loved that broke up with him because he was in love with money, and she thought that he would never have asked her to marry him if at the present time, if they had met at the present time. So she breaks it off with him. Okay, and the ghost shows Scrooge what became of her, and she's married and she has children. And the husband comes in and he says, hey, you'll never guess who I saw today. I saw Scrooge, and he looked like he was really lonely. And ha ha ha, sucks to be him. That is how this author portrays that. That was not the message that I got when I read that scene. It just seemed to me like he was telling his wife, hey, I saw Scrooge. He looked really lonely and stuff. That's kind of sad, and it's a shame, like he was just telling his wife. But this author seems to think that the man was coming home to laugh at Scrooge to his wife and like belittle him somehow and be unkind. And the author is sure to point out how unkind that man was being and how judgmental he was being, and that the author was looking down on that situation. So I did not agree with the author's interpretation of that situation at all. And I didn't appreciate him preaching in the book about how we should be behaving. At the end of the book, we get to see how Scrooge dies. And I didn't care for the way it was portrayed. It was probably pretty much the way he maybe would have went out, I guess, but I didn't, it just seemed very, I don't know. I just think the Christmas Carol should be left alone. I just think it should be left alone. It needs to stand as is without any additions. So I didn't care for the ending of this. I didn't care for Jacob Marley, what happened after Jacob Marley died, and I didn't care for the preachiness in the book. So it got 2 stars for me. Somebody else might really like it, but I certainly wouldn't be the one to recommend it.